Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I can't pinpoint the exact moment it all began, but I wasn't completely in the dark. 14 years together gives you a sense of the subtle shifts. With Amelia, it started off quietly. She began to drift, little by little. First, she skipped our usual Friday dinners. Then she started forgetting minor things, like how I took my coffee or her "I love you" became less certain. At first, I shrugged it off as just life. People hit rough patches, work gets overwhelming, and, if I'm being honest, I hadn't been the most attentive husband either. But soon, the changes were impossible to brush aside. Late nights became her new routine, always explained away by work obligations or client meetings that ran over. I tried to rationalize it at first, but it wasn't her schedule that truly got to me. It was the phone. She was glued to it constantly. The second it chimed, she was on it, swiping before I could even ask who it was. When I'd walk in and catch her messaging someone, she wouldn't even try to hide her discomfort. Her eyes would barely meet mine before she quickly hid the phone beneath her or left the room. I chose to ignore it, telling myself over and over that I was just imagining things. But that uneasy feeling in my gut kept growing stronger. Every time she smiled at her screen, staying on it a bit too long, the knot in my stomach tightened. One evening she slipped up. She left her phone unattended on the kitchen counter, its screen glowing with a notification. I knew right then that everything was about to change. My hands shook as I picked it up, scrolling through her messages while she was upstairs, oblivious. It didn't take long to confirm my worst fears. The evidence wasn't hidden deep in her conversations. It was right there, glaringly obvious, as if she thought I'd never look. There they were, Tom, Jake, Rick. The same guys I spent weekends with, laughing, building memories, trusting. Now their messages to my wife stared back at me, vulgar and explicit. Tom's were the worst, arrogant and shameless. He bragged about their encounters, acting as though he'd taken something of mine without a second thought. "Can't wait for Thursday. Last time was insane. Didn't think you could handle all of us." That was Tom, cocky as ever. Jake's tone was just as casual, like this was normal for them. "I've got dibs on the backyard this time," as if they were picking seats at a dinner table. And Rick? He didn't even use words. Just sent a picture of his junk, like some clueless teenager. I stood there, frozen, the phone in my hand, my chest tight with every breath. A part of me desperately searched for some kind of explanation, something that would make this all a bad misunderstanding. But the more I read, the worse it got. Amelia wasn't some bystander in this. She was in the thick of it, encouraging them, teasing them. "Miss you guys. Can't wait to feel you again," she had written. This wasn't happening in some distant place. It was right here, in our home, in our bed. I couldn't keep reading. It was too much to bear. But I didn't explode. I didn't throw the phone or scream. That's not how I handle things when my world falls apart. Instead, the rage came slowly, creeping through me like ice. It moved up my spine, spread through my limbs until it filled every muscle, every breath. But the colder that anger became, the clearer my thoughts were. I didn't want a chaotic outburst of revenge. No, I wanted something deliberate, something planned. After all, I wasn't the one who had destroyed us. I never asked for those scumbags to force their way into my life, to invade my marriage. But now, they were going to pay for their arrogance. That was when the plan fell into place, cold, calculated, and flawless. The night after, Amelia casually mentioned a late dinner with some clients. I did what I always did. Gave her a kiss on the cheek, pretending like nothing was wrong, and told her I'd be spending the night at a friend's place. Of course, it was all a lie. The moment she left, I made my way to the garage. There it was, industrial-strength glue I had bought long ago for a project I never got around to. Now, it would have a far more creative use. I carried the glue upstairs, making sure to move with purpose, ensuring that nothing would seem out of the ordinary. My first task was setting up the cameras. I wasn't about to miss a single detail. Carefully, I positioned the cameras around the bed, making sure they captured every angle. Soon, I'd have all the evidence I needed, even if they were blissfully unaware. Then came the glue. I worked methodically, spreading the thick adhesive along the bed frame, under the sheets, and across the headboard. As I applied it, I imagined their smug faces, how they'd look when they realized what was happening. The idea of them stuck in the middle of their disgusting act, panicked and exposed, made me almost chuckle. They'd be trapped, unable to move. The following night, I sat in my car, parked just down the street. My engine was off, the only sound being my steady, shallow breathing. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. But I wasn't going to lose control. Not now. Patience. I had waited too long for this moment to make a mistake. Right at 10 p.m., I saw the headlights. Tom's old rust bucket pulled into the driveway just like every other time. A few minutes later, Jake and Rick arrived, as casual as ever. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. The three of them swaggered up to my front door, laughing like they were untouchable, as if they owned the place. They walked inside with no hesitation, completely unaware that tonight would be very different. They had no idea they were stepping into a carefully laid trap. I took a deep breath, calming myself, and then slipped out of the car, moving quietly up the driveway, my eyes locked on the front door. The downstairs lights were off, just as I expected. Everything was happening upstairs. I entered the house as silently as a shadow, the only sound being the faint moans and grunts drifting down from the bedroom. I knew what I would find, but hearing it with my own ears made my stomach churn. Their noises of pleasure felt like daggers twisting in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. Step by step, I crept up the stairs, silent and deliberate. The door to the bedroom was open just enough for me to see what was happening. My heart raced as I took in the scene. There was Amelia, my wife, being degraded in the worst way imaginable. It was obscene, but this wasn't some twisted fantasy. This was my reality. It was happening in my house, my home. Fury boiled up inside me, my vision blurred with red. Every part of me screamed to burst through the door and end it right then and there. But I didn't. I held back. I wasn't prepared for what was coming. Not yet. Instead, I turned back toward the hallway, where the bucket I had left waited, mocking me in its stillness. I had witnessed more than enough. Far too much. The bucket, which had seemed light before, now felt like a heavy weight in my grasp, dragging me down with it. With deliberate, silent steps, I made my way toward the door, my boots barely brushing the hardwood floor. Their sounds reached me, laughter mixed with moans, the kind of noise that haunts your mind, refusing to let go, like a song you can't stop hearing. I didn't give myself time to hesitate. My hand gripped the door handle, and with one firm motion I shoved it open. "What the hell?" was all Tom could get out before the bucket's contents exploded into the room. A thick, sticky substance sprayed everywhere, smacking into their tangled bodies and silencing them instantly. Chaos erupted, like a bomb had gone off, turning the scene into pure pandemonium. Amelia let out a muffled, panicked scream as she twisted in the mess, but it was too late. The glue had already started to harden, trapping her along with the three fools she had chosen to humiliate herself with in their depraved positions. Tom's face twisted from shock to pure terror. "Michael, you son of a—" Jake, his voice filled with frustration, cursed through clenched teeth as he tried to pull himself away from Amelia. But the glue was relentless, too quick, far too quick. The harder they fought, the worse it became. "Damn it! I can't! I'm stuck!" Tom was thrashing wildly, but it didn't make a difference. He was glued in place, trapped inside her like he had been welded there. Jake wasn't faring any better. His teeth gritted as he tried in vain to pry his own body free. Rick? Rick was in the worst position of all. "Jesus Christ!" Jake shouted. "What the hell did you do, man?" I just stood there, arms crossed, unfazed by their panic. Their naked bodies writhed and flailed, every movement entangling them further in the glue's grip. Tom grunted, sweat dripping down his forehead as he fought with all his strength to break free. Amelia's wide, frantic eyes met mine. She gagged again on Rick's banana still lodged in her throat, a muffled cry escaping her lips. Her hair, once neatly styled, was now stuck in clumps to the bed, glued to her back. The pristine image she once presented had crumbled into a grotesque disaster. I remained motionless, arms folded, feeling an odd sense of release, as though a burden I had carried for too long had finally lifted from my shoulders. They continued to struggle, but it was futile. Tom's face turned a deep shade of red, veins bulging as he strained against his restraints. Jake, still muttering in disbelief, gasped, "This isn't what it looks like." As if that even mattered at this point. Rick stared at me, wide-eyed, frozen in shock, like a deer caught in headlights. I had always thought he was smarter than this. Clearly I had been wrong, but it wasn't about them. Amelia was the one who mattered. Her wide, terrified eyes darted between me and the others, her face drained of color. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come at first. I didn't care what she had to say. A cold satisfaction settled deep in my chest, like ice spreading through dark water. "You bastard!" she finally managed to choke out, her voice weak as she squirmed against the glue that had her naked and vulnerable on the bed. I just stared, watching her drown in her own helplessness. "Michael, please, let us go," she pleaded, her voice shaking now, thick with fear. But I didn't even acknowledge her. I calmly pulled out my phone, her desperate words falling on deaf ears as if they meant nothing at all. The moment her treachery came to light, it was as if a bomb had detonated, chaos and destruction in its wake. But now, all of it felt distant, like static in the background. The monotonous sound of the dial tone droned in my ear, and for a second I hoped none of the wives would pick up. Maybe Lisa, who had always been emotionally aloof, would let it go to voicemail. When the line connected, I said her name, flat and devoid of any emotion. No pretense, no warmth. "Mandy," I said, my voice cold. "You need to come over." "Michael, what's happening?" Her confusion was clear. She had no clue what was in store. Tom must have kept her in the dark about tonight. "Just come. Tom's here. You're going to want to see this." I didn't wait for her to ask the inevitable flood of questions. I hung up and dialed the next number. Amelia picked up, her voice immediately filled with panic. "Michael, what are you doing?" she begged. But I was unshaken, more composed than I had been in a long time. I finally had the advantage. "Lisa, Jake's at my place," I said, my voice eerily calm. "If he means anything to you, show up now." By the time I made my way to Karen's number, the scene upstairs had turned into something absurd. Tangled limbs, sweat-drenched and frantic, they were still trying to pull themselves apart. They thought they could talk their way out of it. Idiots. I made my last call and slid the phone into my pocket, taking a moment to watch the spectacle they had become. "That's it?" Rick rasped, his voice cracking. "You're just going to stand there and call our wives like some kind of lunatic?" "Exactly," I said without hesitation. They hadn't yet grasped what was about to unfold, but that didn't concern me. They would soon. I went downstairs and waited, each tick of the clock marking the countdown to their ruin. It didn't take long. Within 15 minutes of the calls, I heard the screech of tires pulling up outside. First Mandy, then Lisa. Karen wouldn't be far behind. Their footsteps pounded through the house, voices rising in confusion. "Michael?" Mandy's voice echoed down the hall. "Where are you?" I didn't move. They would find their way. Upstairs, where everything had already gone to hell. I listened as they climbed the stairs, one after the other. I didn't make a sound. This was their scene now. The silence that followed once they reached the top floor was suffocating. I could see it in my mind like a warped photograph. Their bodies a tangled mess on the bed, a grotesque tableau of deceit. Then the shouting began. "What the hell is this? Oh my God!" Lisa's voice sliced through the tension, her rage focused entirely on Jake. "You moron! How could you do this?" But Mandy was the first to act. She stormed toward Tom, her face contorted with fury. Her hand came down hard, the slap reverberating through the room, leaving a fiery red mark on his cheek. Tom tried to speak, his mouth moving but producing nothing more than gasps. "You worthless piece of trash," she hissed, her eyes blazing. "You didn't just betray me, you did it with her." Amelia, still trapped on the bed, whimpered in response. Her wide eyes were full of silent pleas, as if begging for some way out of this horrific scene, out from under the judgment of three men who had once thought they knew her. Lisa's mouth was occupied, but an apology was far from her thoughts. She stumbled back, her eyes wide with shock as they fixed on Jake, catching him red-handed in the moment. "Jake? Seriously? You absolute piece of trash," she spat. Lisa, Jake fumbled, struggling to find any coherent words. "You don't know? Is that what you're going to say?" she interrupted sharply, her voice heavy with scorn. "You seem to know exactly what you're doing, plastered to that filth." Jake, completely exposed, looked as if he wanted to melt into the floor, but there was no escape. He was frozen, utterly defenseless. Karen stormed forward next, her cheeks wet with tears but her fists clenched, filled with anger. She lashed out, landing a punch squarely on Rick's chest, close to where Mandy had already slapped him. It wasn't a powerful hit, but Rick still groaned, his body jerking, pulling Amelia awkwardly with him. "Damn you, Rick," Karen sobbed, her voice breaking apart. "After everything we've been through, this is how you repay me?" Rick barely managed a pitiful, "I'm sorry, babe." Chaos erupted all around them. The room buzzed with screams, sobbing, accusations, and insults hurled like weapons. Their betrayal was exposed, literally. And my unfaithful wife? She didn't even have the decency to say sorry. Her tear-streaked, swollen face only made her look more pitiful. Rick stayed glued to her, silencing her with his lips for once. But even if she could speak, I doubted it would be the apology I needed to hear. I stood there, arms folded, watching the mess unfold with a strange sense of detachment. Amelia squirmed, desperate for someone, maybe me, to step in and rescue her. Her gaze kept flicking toward me, but I wasn't about to be her savior. She could stay stuck for all I cared. Lisa's face twisted with fury, her words like venomous darts. "You filthy pigs! I gave you everything, and you're throwing it all away for this?" Jake kept his eyes down, mumbling half-hearted apologies, his words barely forming, but Lisa was done. "Shut up, Jake!" she barked, tearing the bedsheet off, as if stripping it would somehow erase the repulsive scene before her. Karen, meanwhile, was still screaming between her sobs, her fists pounding against Rick's back. "I hate you! You were supposed to love me!" "I do, Karen," Rick pleaded, his voice dripping with desperation. "Please, just let me explain." His body was still hunched awkwardly, pinning Amelia beneath him, unable to move. Mandy, pacing furiously, shot me a glare, her rage palpable. "How long have you known?" she demanded. "Long enough," I responded coolly, locking eyes with her before glancing at Amelia, who was now sobbing uncontrollably. "They're disgusting," Mandy muttered, her words soaked in revulsion. I gave a small nod. No argument from me. Suddenly, Lisa stormed over to the nightstand, grabbed the lamp and smashed it on the floor, sending glass shards flying. Jake flinched, probably bracing himself for the next blow. "You never deserved me," she hissed, her eyes burning with fury. Then she turned to me. "Michael, what are you going to do about this?" With calm indifference, I shrugged and pulled out my phone. "This," I said. I held up the phone, showing the recording I had started earlier. The flash reflected off Rick's tear-streaked face, his expression twisted in despair. "Please, Michael," he begged. Tom, still cowering in the corner like a beaten animal, whimpered pathetically. "Shut up." For the first time in what seemed like forever, my voice was steady, calm, even. It felt like mine again. "She made her choice," I said, motioning towards Amelia with my phone. "They all did." She shook her head frantically, but all it did was smear more of Rick's grime across her tear-streaked face. Her sobs were muffled now, which was honestly a welcome change. The pitiful excuses from the men were grating enough without her adding to the noise. Mandy's face twisted with disgust as she stared at Tom. "I'm divorcing you," she snarled, her voice sharp and final. "You're worthless." Nearby, Lisa kicked a chair out of her way, the screech of metal on the floor piercing through the room's thick tension. "You'll burn for this, Jake," Karen spat, her tears drying up, replaced by a fury that cut through the remaining grief. She wiped her face, her voice now icy. "You were never enough for me, Rick," she hissed, locking eyes with him. I see that now. I kept my distance, recording everything. There was no need to get any closer. The camera was capturing it all. The chaos, the tears, the desperate glances, and the feeble excuses drenched in self-pity. Amelia's terrified eyes met mine through the lens, silently begging for something. Mercy, maybe. Her lips moved, trying to form words, but they were swallowed by the weight of her guilt. For the past 10 minutes she had been repeating the same lines. I'm sorry, I love you. It was a mistake. But none of it was meant for me. Her tears weren't for the wreckage she had left in our lives, in our marriage, in the years we had shared. She was crying because she had been exposed. There was no hiding anymore. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. As the wives unleashed their fury, Mandy gripped Tom's hair with both hands, pulling hard. Lisa was lashing out at Jake, knocking over whatever she could reach in her rage. Karen's fists struck Rick, not hard enough to hurt him, but just enough to make him wince with each blow. Not one of them spared a glance at Amelia. She was exactly where she belonged. I took a step back. I had seen all I needed to see. The anger that had been boiling inside me for days was finally starting to cool. The worst part was over. It was time to leave. A sense of calm washed over me. I was done. Before I turned to go, I glanced back one last time at the mayhem behind me. Mandy ripping into Tom, Lisa in a fury, Karen still crying but resolute, and that hideous tangle of bodies on the bed, pieces of a nightmare I had finally pieced together. I descended the stairs, the shouting and chaos fading with every step, the weight on my chest growing lighter. By the time I reached the door, the cool night air hit me, and I took a long, deep breath. Outside, I got into my car and sat there for a moment. I glanced up at the house, at the nightmare it had become, and then I drove away. I didn't look back, not even once. The next morning I filed for divorce without hesitation. When I laid out the evidence for my lawyer, photos, videos, every sordid detail, his face went pale. Michael, this is extensive, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. I just shrugged. It was necessary. The divorce process was swift, brutal, and clean. Amelia didn't contest it. She couldn't. The evidence was irrefutable. In the end, she left with nothing. No home, no money, just the clothes on her back and the consequences of her choices. As for Tom, Jake, and Rick, their marriages went up in flames just as quickly. Mandy, Lisa, and Karen didn't waste a moment filing for divorce, severing all ties without a second thought. Last I heard, the men were living out of their cars, pariahs in a town that couldn't stop buzzing with gossip. Their lives were ruined, their reputations shattered. Our small town couldn't stop talking about it. Everywhere I went, people stared, their hushed voices trailing me like an unwanted companion. Did you hear about Michael's wife? Amelia? I never thought she'd sink so low. Those men should be ashamed of themselves. Their gossip lingered in the air, but I held my head high, refusing to let their words affect me. Let them talk. I had no reason to feel ashamed. Amelia had tried to reach out a few times, but I blocked her number without hesitation. One day she showed up at my door. Her face was streaked with mascara, tears streaming down as she pleaded for forgiveness. Without a second thought, I shut the door in her face. A week later, I was quietly enjoying a drink at the local bar when Tom, Jake, and Rick stormed in, their expressions twisted with fury as they made a beeline toward me. "You bastard!" Tom hissed, leaning in close. "You've ruined our lives." I calmly sipped my whiskey, unbothered. "Seems like you managed that yourselves when you all decided to sleep with my wife." Jake slammed his hand on the bar. "We deserve compensation for that glue stunt you pulled." I raised an eyebrow, amused. "Is that right?" Rick puffed out his chest, trying to look menacing. "Yeah, you either pay up or we're pressing charges. Assault, unlawful imprisonment, you name it," Tom added, his voice sharp with frustration. I couldn't help but chuckle at their pathetic attempt to scare me. "By all means," I replied, staring them down. "File those charges, I dare you, but don't forget I still have those videos. One click, and the whole internet will be watching your sorry asses. You'll be celebrities worldwide." Their faces drained of color. Tom opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. "That's what I thought," I said, turning back to my drink. "Now get the hell out of here." They left, defeated, their bravado evaporated. I never saw them again. In the weeks that followed, the weight of Amelia's betrayal and the anger toward my so-called friends lifted. I sold the house, packed up my life, and decided it was time for a fresh start in a new place. On the day I left, I drove past the spots that once held meaning for us. The park where we had our first date, the restaurant where I proposed. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Imagine being married for 43 years, and suddenly your spouse asks for a year of complete freedom. No contact, no rules, and the possibility of forming new relationships. How would you react? This is the exact situation I found myself in. Here's how it all started. Oscar Anderson, the successful CEO of a family business, had just arranged a surprise trip to celebrate many years of marriage with his wife, Poppy. Little did he know, their life was about to experience a significant upheaval. For years, Oscar had worked tirelessly to build a thriving company that had been passed down through his family for generations. He devoted himself to providing his family with a stable and comfortable life, balancing his role as a business leader with active community involvement. "Good evening, dear," Oscar greeted warmly as he entered the kitchen after a long day at work. Poppy glanced at him briefly from her seat at the table, her face expressionless, giving nothing away. "I thought you'd be home earlier," she remarked. "What's with the red envelope? Valentine's Day was last week." "I had some business to finish," Oscar replied, setting his briefcase and the envelope down on the coffee table. He tapped the envelope gently. "We need to talk about this tonight." Oscar sat down across from her and noticed 2 glasses of red wine already poured. Beside her glass were a pen and a notebook, which piqued his curiosity. "How was your day?" Poppy asked, sounding casual, though her tone carried a certain detachment, as if she wasn't particularly interested in his answer. "It was fine," Oscar replied cautiously, his gaze drifting toward the notebook. "But I sense this isn't just about my day." Poppy sighed heavily, as if gathering the courage to speak. "You're right," she began. "Lately I've been thinking a lot. About my life, about us. After organizing a reunion for my sorority sisters after so many years, losing 2 close friends to cancer, and with the kids leaving home, I've started to wonder where I'm heading." She paused, looking directly into Oscar's eyes. "And that brings me to our marriage. 43 years is a long time. Some of my sorority friends are already on their 2nd, even 3rd marriages." She leaned back in her chair and continued. "So where does that leave us? What keeps us together? And more importantly, what will keep us together for the next 20 years? Oscar listened intently, his mind racing. "I understand," he said slowly. "I've been reflecting on my life too. Some men go through a midlife crisis, buy expensive cars, or start dating younger women. I'm grateful I didn't take that path. I have an incredible wife who keeps me grounded. And how can I make the next phase of our life something to look forward to?" Poppy smiled faintly. "That's why I love you, Oscar. You really listen. Most men wouldn't even try to understand." She took a deep breath before continuing. "But I think I have a solution. My whole life, I've lived under someone else's roof. First, it was my father's house, then the sorority dorm in college. After we married, I moved into this house, a wedding gift from your grandparents." Her voice grew more passionate. "Being with you has been wonderful, but not entirely fulfilling. I've always been the wife of the Chamber of Commerce president, the wife of the church council member, the wife of the country club president. I've always been in your shadow. You are the sun, Oscar, and I'm one of the moons orbiting around you." Oscar sat in silence, unsure where her words were leading. "I need to step out of this orbit," Poppy said firmly. "If I don't, I'm afraid I'll lose myself completely." She took a deep breath before continuing. "I want to leave. I've thought about this long and hard. I need a break. Freedom. Call it what you will. A year, with no contact between us. I'll move out and live on my own, and during that time we can both reflect. Oscar was stunned, his mind struggling to keep up. No contact at all? He asked in disbelief. I understand you need space, but no communication at all, that seems too much. Poppy nodded. It will be hard for both of us, she admitted. I'll think about you every day, but after a year we'll meet again and decide what comes next. Oscar stared at her, bewildered. His life, once so neatly organized, was now crumbling right before his eyes. Our lives are so closely intertwined, Poppy began, her voice calm but firm. How can we possibly untangle them? It will feel like we're no longer husband and wife, she explained, as if it were self-evident. She continued, outlining her vision of the future. They would drift apart, each focusing on their own interests, exploring new passions. Poppy shared that she couldn't wait to take feminist courses and immerse herself in fresh perspectives. It's like a break, but without bitterness or distrust, she said, almost cheerfully. We'll still be lovers, just apart for a year. Couples in the military do it all the time. It works for them. Oscar listened, but with every word she spoke, a cold fear crept into his heart. You mentioned you'd behave like a free woman, seeing new people, he began, his voice trembling with anxiety. Does that mean you plan to see other men? Poppy's smile was faint and indifferent. Perhaps, she admitted, keeping her tone composed. But I doubt anyone will rush to invite me to a fancy dinner or anything like that. Oscar's face tensed, his worry growing. And if you do end up seeing someone, does that mean you'll, well, sleep with them? His voice shook as he tried to stay calm. Poppy shrugged slightly. Maybe, she said, still unperturbed. How else can I fully understand what it means to be a woman? You're the only man I've ever been with, Oscar. I just want to be on the same level as you. Oscar's face tightened, anger starting to simmer inside him. You seem to be forgetting something important. We're married. We made vows to share life together, to go through everything as one. I've kept my word, and I expect the same from you. Poppy's response was dismissive. Let's see how things are in a year, she said, waving off his concerns. We'll figure it out when the time comes. Oscar's patience was wearing thin. There's no guarantee you'll come back to me at all, he said, his voice rising. What if you fall in love with someone else? What if I'm no longer the one you want? Oh, don't be so dramatic, Poppy scoffed. It's just physical intimacy, Oscar, nothing more. When we reunite after a year, you'll be grateful everything is back to normal. Don't make it out to be more than it is. I'm trying to grow, to become more confident, and that will make me a better partner for you. Oscar felt the ground slipping from under him. A year without contact? It seemed too extreme. Why can't we work this out through therapy? He suggested, trying to find a compromise. Poppy shook her head, her resolve unwavering. Talking isn't enough. I don't want to just discuss change. I need to live it. If we don't take a real break, I'll keep relying on you and won't be able to grow. I need to know what it's like to be apart so I can come back with a clearer mind. Oscar's voice was barely a whisper. I don't think I can survive this. But Poppy was resolute. Oscar, I need to do this now. It's better to go through a year of uncertainty and stress than to drag this out for years. When it's over, we'll be stronger. Oscar's heart clenched. When are you planning to move out? He asked, his voice hollow. I've already rented an apartment for the next year. I'll start moving this weekend, Poppy replied, as if it were just another task on her list. Oscar felt the ground completely give way beneath him. He stammered, trying to find the right words. Can't we at least talk about this in more detail before you make such a big decision? He pleaded. Poppy reached out, placing her hand on his. I'm really grateful that you're willing to discuss this, she said softly. I truly believe that in the long run, this will make our relationship better. I love you for your understanding. Oscar pulled his hand away, her words cutting deep. You're giving me far too much credit, he said painfully. I don't understand why you're doing this, and to be honest, I don't support it. It feels like this is happening no matter what I want, like my feelings don't even matter. Without saying another word, he stood, his head spinning. At the moment, I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't even know where to begin or how to handle this situation. My head is spinning like a whirlwind. Maybe we just need to sleep on it, and tomorrow evening we can figure everything out. Are you going to bed, or are we already starting to drift apart from each other? Not yet, darling, Poppy softly replied. I need to finish all the details of my move, but I'll join you soon. With a heavy heart, Oscar climbed the stairs, exhausted. He collapsed onto the bed, but sleep wouldn't come. His thoughts were a tangled mess of uncertainty, questions endlessly spinning in his head, offering no clear answers. Later that night, Poppy quietly slipped into bed next to him, gently pressing her body against his. She kissed his shoulder, and he felt her warm tears soak into his skin as she whispered, I'm so sorry, Oscar. I'm sorry too, Poppy, he responded, his voice barely audible. I love you, she whispered, her words filled with emotion. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, Is this the last time I'll hear you say that? Her voice was soft, but with a glimmer of hope as she replied, I want this to make us better, not worse. I'm leaving to become a better wife, a better lover, and I will come back. The next morning, Oscar woke up earlier than usual. For the first time, he didn't make Poppy her morning coffee in bed. Instead, he left the house, got into his car, and texted his friend Tony. He needed advice, a way to make sense of the chaos around him. After Oscar explained Poppy's plan, Tony listened carefully and then looked at him seriously. Honestly, man, it sounds like she already has someone else, but she's hesitating to make the final move. She's testing how things will play out. If it works out with him, you'll be her second choice. If it doesn't, she'll come back, pretending to be renewed and ready to be the perfect wife again. You're her backup plan, Oscar, while she figures it all out. How do I stop her from using me like that? Oscar asked, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. Let her go, and do it quickly, Tony said firmly. Take control. The day she moves out, file for divorce. Make it clear that she's the one leaving. Divorce will take about 5 to 6 months. If for some reason you still want her back, just don't sign the final papers. That way, you'll be in control. Tony continued, and remember this, if she cheats and you take her back, it'll be easier for her to cheat again. And one more thing, keep calm. Don't lose control, don't yell. If things get out of hand, especially in court, losing your temper will only hurt you. Act like you agree with her decision, like you understand. As Oscar was leaving the car dealership, his eyes fell on a black convertible. On impulse, he decided to buy it. If things are going this way, I might as well get something good out of this year, he joked to Tony with a grin. When he got home that evening, Poppy was already there, her anxiety evident. Oscar, darling, where are you? She called, her voice full of worry. I missed you this morning. Can we talk? I've been thinking a lot since our conversation last night. Oscar kept his tone calm. I needed some time alone. The drive helped clear my head. I've been doing a lot of thinking, too. I can take the day off if you need me, Poppy offered, her voice softening. I know I turned your world upside down last night. I'm really worried about you, my wonderful husband. Just tell me what you need. We can talk now, at lunch, or dinner, whenever. I need you to be here. I'm afraid of the path I feel like I'm heading down. Please, Oscar, I need your advice. A flicker of resentment sparked in Oscar as she suddenly sought comfort, despite everything she had said. Taking a deep breath, he quietly replied, I need more time, Poppy. I really need to think about this separation and what it means for us. I'll be in the study, I'll close the door, turn off my phone, and try to figure out what to do next. Why don't we stick to our usual dinner time today? Oscar suggested. I'll take care of everything so you can relax and not worry about cooking or cleaning. Poppy quickly agreed, grateful for the offer. However, when they later sat down at the table, an unspoken tension filled the room. During dinner, Poppy enthusiastically shared her plans about moving into her new apartment and the courses she intended to take. She asked Oscar if she could take some of their furniture with her, and he briefly nodded in response. Thank you for being considerate, Poppy said with a smile. You're so kind. Oscar restrained himself from making a sarcastic remark. Instead, he said, I doubt all your things will fit in a 200 square foot apartment. What's your plan for the rest? When Poppy suggested leaving some items in the house, Oscar firmly shook his head. If you're moving, everything has to go with you. This can't be a backup option while you start a new life. Poppy's initial excitement about her decision began to fade. You're okay with me taking the bed, but now you're creating issues about the other things, she said, showing her irritation. What am I supposed to do if I can't leave them here? If you want to be independent, why are you asking me for help? Oscar responded coldly. You chose to leave and live on your own, so why do you expect me to step in now? You can always rent a storage unit. There are plenty around the city. The conversation quickly escalated into a heated argument about logistics. In the end, Oscar decided to stop beating around the bush. Poppy, I've been thinking a lot since we first talked about all this. If I have to be without a wife for a while, maybe I should consider making some changes, he stated bluntly. Poppy stared at him in shock. What changes are you talking about? I'll be free, and I want to change my life, Oscar said calmly. Maybe I should think about replacing my wife with someone younger and more interesting, instead of staying with the outdated version. Wait a minute, Poppy flared up. I'm doing this to become a better version of myself for you. There's no reason for you to start looking for someone else. I don't like your plan either, Oscar retorted. But you made it clear that my feelings don't matter. You were going to do what you wanted regardless of how I felt. You didn't care what it meant to me to have a wife who wants to be with other men. So, while you do whatever you want, I'll do the same over the next year. Let's see how it all turns out. The argument escalated to the point where Poppy eventually stormed out of the house, leaving Oscar alone. A red envelope with their travel plans remained unopened on the coffee table, a reminder of what once was. In the following weeks, Oscar threw himself into work and enjoyed his newfound freedom. He redecorated the house, removing family photos and replacing them with sports memorabilia. He started grilling steaks outside and listening to jazz at full volume, things Poppy had never approved of. Meanwhile, Poppy settled into her new apartment and began taking feminist theory courses. However, the joy of this new phase in her life was overshadowed by the growing distance between her and their children, who didn't understand her choices. As time passed, both Oscar and Poppy found themselves navigating unfamiliar territory. Although he didn't want to, Oscar attended court-ordered marriage counseling sessions. The therapist explored the reasons behind their separation. Poppy insisted that she needed to rediscover herself, while Oscar remained adamant that her desire to be with other men was something he could not tolerate. During this time, Oscar started spending time with two women, Linda, a striking widow with a young son, and Sarah, a former professional swimmer now working in real estate. While he enjoyed their company, he stayed true to himself and decided to remain celibate until his marriage was officially over. On the other hand, Poppy fully immersed herself in her new life, going to clubs with her recently divorced friends and enjoying the attention of other men. However, a chance encounter with a charming stranger named Nick led to unexpected consequences. As the year-long separation neared its end, the tension between Oscar and Poppy reached its peak. Poppy was confident that Oscar would take her back without hesitation, but Oscar had changed. Her betrayal had left a wound that would not heal so easily. The tension reached its peak when the couple's children discovered incriminating photos of Poppy's infidelity, sealing the fate of their already crumbling marriage. The day of reckoning arrived when Oscar and Poppy met at the lawyer's office to finalize the inevitable. Poppy arrived first, stylishly dressed in a new outfit, radiating hope that perhaps there was still a chance for reconciliation. Oscar arrived shortly after her, calmly placing a bright red envelope on the table. "Apologies for the delay," he murmured. After exchanging quick, polite greetings, the lawyers got straight to business, presenting the divorce papers. Oscar and Poppy signed the documents as previously agreed. Once the paperwork was complete, Oscar turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Do you have anything to say?" he asked, his voice calm but devoid of emotion. Poppy took a deep breath. "This year has been incredibly hard without the person I love by my side. But through these difficulties, I've grown. I've gained a deeper understanding of myself and our marriage. I need to thank you, Oscar, for giving me the space to reflect. Now, more than ever, I am committed to our union. I promise, you will never regret giving me another chance. I will prove my loyalty to you for the rest of my life." Oscar remained unmoved, his face betraying no reaction. When she finished, he responded in an even tone, "Trust is the foundation of everything, Poppy. Our vows were built on that, on loyalty. Without trust, love cannot exist. That's why we're here, signing these divorce papers. I can only hope that we both will be honest with ourselves." He paused before continuing. "Over the past year, I've interacted with other women, but I never allowed myself to cross certain boundaries." He locked eyes with Poppy. "Can you say the same? Have you been faithful to me?" The question caught Poppy off guard. She blinked, startled, and quickly replied, "Yes, of course, I've been faithful." Oscar's expression hardened. He took the red envelope, pulled out a photograph, and placed it in front of her. The picture showed Poppy passionately kissing Nick at a nightclub. "Is this your idea of loyalty?" he asked, his tone sharp. Poppy's face flushed with embarrassment. She stammered, "It was just a kiss. It meant nothing. I didn't cheat." Oscar didn't respond immediately, instead producing another, far more compromising photo. Poppy's eyes widened in shock, horror spreading across her face. "Where did you get this?" she asked in panic. "Were you spying on me?" Oscar's voice trembled with restrained anger. "Our son's girlfriend took these. She happened to be at the same club. Our son found out from her. It's a disgrace to our family." As the weight of her actions settled in, Poppy's face paled. Tears began to well in her eyes, while Oscar's voice rose, filled with unbearable emotion. "Do you have any idea what it was like for our son to see his mother, in a crowded club, behaving like this with some random guy? He had to endure that shame. Can you even imagine what was going through his mind when he saw that photo? And now you wonder why the kids won't answer your calls?" Casting one last glance at his lawyer, Oscar handed over the signed divorce documents. "File them," he ordered firmly. Poppy's voice was desperate as she tried to justify herself. "Oscar, it was meaningless. It meant nothing to me, and it meant nothing to Nick. It was just physical. There was no love involved." Oscar's eyes grew even colder, his gaze icy. "That's what makes it even worse, Poppy," he replied, his voice terrifyingly calm. "The fact that it meant nothing to you, knowing how much it meant to me. Do you even realize how deeply that hurts?" His words were the final crushing blow. "That's the cruelest thing you could have said to me," she whispered, broken. Poppy burst into tears, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs as she pleaded for forgiveness. "No, please, no, I want to be your wife again. Please forgive me. I promise, I'll be faithful from now on. Please don't leave me. I don't want to end up like one of those women who are left alone after a divorce. Don't push me away. I beg you, forgive me." Her desperate words didn't reach him. Oscar had already stepped out the door, and her pleas gradually faded as he made his way to his BMW. The rest of the day passed in quiet solitude. With a glass of whiskey in hand and a slowly smoldering cigar nearby, he sat on the terrace, lost in thought. In the evening, his phone buzzed non-stop, calls from Poppy and messages from Linda, Sarah, and the kids. But Oscar decided to ignore them all. The next morning, Linda gently shook his shoulder, waking him from a restless sleep. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her face full of concern. Oscar forced a faint smile. "I'm okay, I guess. Why wouldn't I be? At least you haven't lost your sense of humor even after the divorce." She sat beside him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. "What's next? Will I be a part of what's to come?" Without hesitation, Oscar replied, "Of course you will. I'm here for you. Take your time. You're still processing the end of a long marriage. It's no small thing." She squeezed his hand, offering support. "I'll be here for as long as it takes." As winter set in, with its crisp air and white snowflakes, Oscar slowly started to adjust to his new reality. He declined an invitation to meet friends over the weekend, feeling the need to be alone and reflect. On Saturday morning, Sarah appeared at his doorstep. "I heard it hasn't been easy," she said kindly, "but at least it's behind you now." Oscar nodded and invited her inside. They sat on the couch, and after a long silence, Sarah took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you," she began quietly. "I've been meaning to say this for a while, but you had so much on your plate." She hesitated before continuing, "And honestly, I didn't want to ruin our time together." Oscar tensed, bracing himself for what was coming. "I'm engaged," Sarah confessed softly. "We've been together for 3 years." Oscar blinked, stunned. "What? Why did you hide this from me?" Sarah explained that her feelings for him were always based on friendship, not romance. "That doesn't change the fact that I deeply care about you as my best friend," she reassured him. "I love you, but not in the way you might have thought. I can't marry you, but if he's okay with it, I'd love to keep our friendship as it's always been." As Sarah's words sank in, Oscar felt an unexpected sense of relief. The pressure of choosing between Sarah and Linda vanished. "Thank you for your honesty," he said, squeezing her hand. "You're my best friend, and I'm glad we can stay that way." In the following weeks, Oscar focused on healing and moving forward. He spent more time with both Sarah and Linda, appreciating their unwavering support. Meanwhile, Poppy struggled to adjust to her new life. She had moved into a smaller apartment in a less prestigious part of town, and her finances were strained due to the terms of the divorce. She tried to rebuild her relationship with the children, but they responded coldly and distantly, their wounds still fresh. Poppy was diagnosed with deep depression, and she even lost her job after frequent absences. Her employer told her, "I'm sorry, but we need a reliable employee. You're fired." The weight of loneliness pressed even harder on her. The children continued to avoid her, and so did her friends. Work had been her lifeline, but now even that was gone. "What a fool I am," she often whispered to herself. But it was too late to think about that now. She had made her choice. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. She didn't collapse to her knees in a white dress. She didn't run out into the rain or send dramatic late-night messages. It all began with a single suggestion, spoken too calmly, as if it weren't a way to destroy love, but just a new weekend idea. "What if we did things a little differently?" she asked. Jonathan's life had nothing out of the ordinary. Work, home, a warm and steady routine. He believed in honesty, loyalty, and that love was a partnership, not a transaction. But that one phrase shifted everything. A new experience, an open relationship. No feelings involved, just exploration. At first, he tried to be flexible, tried to understand, tried not to lose her. But the further this freedom went, the tighter the noose became around his neck, made of lies, second phones, and "it doesn't mean anything." And when the truth finally surfaced, it was already too late. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. I never sought out drama. My days moved in a comfortable rhythm. Punch in at work, head home, occasionally catch up with a few close friends. I had always subscribed to a pretty traditional view of relationships and what marriage ought to look like. Then came Naomi. We met at a casual backyard party thrown by a mutual acquaintance. There was something electric about her, full of life, effortlessly charming, impossible to ignore. We hit it off right away. After 2 solid years together, I proposed. She said yes, and for a while, everything felt right. We dove headfirst into imagining our future, joint bank accounts, weekend getaways, maybe a dog someday. But as is often the case, the script didn't play out quite as expected. About a year after we got engaged, an unexpected topic surfaced, one that threw our plans into uncertainty. We were sprawled on the couch one evening, half invested in some show about unconventional couples, when she said, casually, but with a certain weight behind her words, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing things a little differently?" I turned toward her, eyebrows raised. Different how? She hesitated for a second. Like, opening up the relationship a bit? I blinked, caught off guard. An open relationship? I echoed, trying to wrap my head around the idea. Where is this coming from? She gave a light shrug. I was reading this piece earlier today. It talked about couples who found longevity and happiness by giving each other some freedom, still committed, but with space to explore. I sat with that for a moment, unsure how to respond. Are you unhappy with us? Her answer came fast. No, not at all. I love you, Jonathan, truly. But I thought maybe it could be something new, something exciting, nothing serious, just exploration. I exhaled slowly. I'm not sure, Naomi. That's never really been part of how I imagined our relationship. She rested her hand lightly on mine. You don't have to decide now. Just think about it. That night I lay awake, thoughts spinning. Was there something she needed that I wasn't giving her? Had I been missing signs? Over the next several days she mentioned it again, casually, like it wasn't a big deal, but always with that same hopeful glint in her eyes. It started to feel like she was waiting for me to come around. Eventually, I relented. One evening, I turned to her and said, "All right, let's give it a try, but we need to set some rules." Her face lit up. Are you serious? Yeah, I nodded, but there have to be boundaries, ground rules. We came up with a few together. No emotional attachments, full transparency, and a mutual understanding that we'd pull back if it started to hurt either of us. A week later, Naomi had a night out with her girlfriends. When she got back, she was practically glowing. How was it? I asked. Really nice, she said, grinning slyly. I met someone, Grant. He's fun, but don't worry, it's just light. I nodded, swallowing the knot forming in my throat. Not long after, I figured it was time for me to step into this new world too. Camilla, a colleague I'd always had good rapport with, came to mind. I asked if she wanted to grab a coffee sometime. Wait, are you actually asking me out? Camilla said, laughing. I chuckled a bit awkwardly. Yeah, things are kind of different for me now. She tilted her head. Different how? My fiancé and I are experimenting with an open relationship, I said. Her eyebrows rose. That's unexpected. How's it going? Honestly, still finding my footing, but I thought maybe we could hang out. She smiled. Sure, let's see where it goes. Camilla and I began seeing each other casually, coffee dates, relaxed dinners, the occasional flirtatious moment. It was nice to feel noticed, but beneath it all, I felt unsettled. One night, over a quiet dinner, Naomi asked, So, how's it going with Camilla? She's cool, I said, keeping it vague. We're just keeping it chill. She gave a slow nod, then looked away for a beat. Jonathan, there's something I need to tell you. I felt a tightness rise in my chest. What is it? I've been seeing Grant more often than we originally said we would, she admitted. A pang of anxiety hit me. How often are we talking? Every other day, she said softly. My jaw clenched. That's not what we agreed on, Naomi. I know, she said, her voice trembling. It just happened. We really connected, but I didn't mean for it to go this far. Her eyes shimmered. I love you, Jonathan. I don't want to lose us. I stared at her, overwhelmed. I need space. I need time to think. The days that followed, I kept my distance. I needed air. I needed clarity. At work, Camilla noticed the shift almost immediately. You've been a little off lately. Everything okay? She asked gently. It's Naomi, I sighed. She's caught feelings for the guy she's seeing. Camilla's eyes were thoughtful as she slowly nodded, a hint of concern shadowing her face. Jonathan, maybe this whole open relationship thing just isn't meant for you. I let out a long breath, the truth finally sinking deep into my chest like a stone. Yeah. I think you're right. I thought I could handle it, but it's pulling us apart instead of bringing us closer. She reached across the table, the soft brush of her fingers against mine offering quiet comfort. You're a good man, Jonathan. You deserve someone who's fully committed, no conditions, no halves. Her words followed me like a ghost on my walk home. When I stepped through the door, Naomi was waiting on the couch, tension written all over her face. We need to talk, she said, without preamble. I dropped onto the seat across from her, steeling myself. Yeah, we do. Her voice was steady, deliberate. I've made a decision. My brows lifted. You have? I'm ending it with Grant, she said firmly, not a flicker of doubt in her eyes. I blinked, stunned. You're serious? She nodded. Dead serious. I don't want to lose you, Jonathan. Opening the relationship, it was a mistake. I still love you. I want to fix this. Relief swept through me, sudden and deep. I love you too, Naomi. But this isn't something we fix overnight. We've got a lot to rebuild. I know, she said, her voice low but resolute. And I'm ready to do the work. At first, things genuinely started to improve. She cut Grant out of her life, and we both committed to therapy. It felt like progress, but the past hung over us like a storm cloud that refused to pass. Restoring trust turned out to be harder than either of us imagined. Then one evening, I walked in and found her speaking softly into her phone. The second she noticed me, she hung up. Who were you talking to? I asked. No one, she replied quickly, avoiding my gaze. Naomi, don't lie. My tone sharpened, slicing through the silence. She hesitated before finally admitting. It was Grant. He called me just to check in. The sting of betrayal was immediate. You gave me your word, I reminded her coldly. I know, Jonathan. I didn't reach out. He did, she said, her voice growing defensive. But something in her tone, the way her eyes danced away from mine, it didn't sit right. Later that night, when she was fast asleep, I sat in the dark, listening to the quiet hum of the house. My hand trembled as I reached for her phone on the nightstand. I scrolled through her messages, heart pounding. It was all there, message after message from Grant. Not just the odd check-in, long threads, recent conversations, signs of a relationship that had never truly ended. One text read, I miss you. When can we meet again? Another, just from yesterday. Jonathan has no idea, right? I sat frozen, her phone resting on my knees, my mind spinning, breath shallow and tight. I didn't return it. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the living room, watching the darkness stretch into morning. By the time the sun came up, I was already sitting at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. Naomi shuffled in, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Morning, she said, leaning in to kiss me. I turned away. She stopped short. What is it? Without a word, I slid her phone across the table. The screen lit up, still on her messages with Grant. Her face went pale. Jonathan, I saw everything, I said, voice ice cold. You told me it was done. You promised me. She wrapped her arms around herself, retreating into a protective shell. I didn't mean for it to keep going. I didn't know how to stop. Oh, you didn't know how, I said, standing. You just kept sneaking around instead, lying to me. Tears welled in her eyes. He kept reaching out. I didn't know how to shut it down without hurting him. I felt guilty. Guilty? I laughed bitterly. You should have felt guilty for what you did to me, not for sparing his feelings. I love you, Jonathan, she whispered, voice cracking. I don't want to lose you. You already have, I said, the words heavy in my mouth. Every lie, every secret meeting, every message, you broke us piece by piece. She took a shaky step forward. Please. We can still fix this. I inhaled deeply, my pulse a steady roar in my ears. "How?" I asked. "How do we repair something you shattered over and over again?" She reached for me, but I stepped back. That distance between us felt permanent. "It's over, Naomi," I said quietly. "I can't build a life with someone I can't trust. Someone who keeps clinging to someone else while telling me I'm the only one." She collapsed into tears. "Don't do this. I'll end it with Grant for good. I swear to you." I shook my head, slow and tired. "You already made that promise, and you broke it. Why should I believe anything you say now?" "I'll show you," she begged. "I'll prove it to you. Just give me one more chance. Just let me prove myself." A breath escaped me, slow and strained, the ache in my chest pressing hard. "I did give you that chance, Naomi," I replied, my voice empty. "I gave you all I had, my trust, my heart, and you crushed it. I can't keep going in circles." "Jonathan, please," she whispered, sinking to the floor and clinging to my hands like they were the only thing keeping her afloat. "Don't let this be how it ends." I gently pulled my hands away, speaking quietly, but with resolve. "I need truth. I need respect. You've got 3 days to gather your things and move out." Without another word, I turned and left her in the kitchen, her quiet sobs trailing behind me. I packed the basics, tossed them into a duffel, and booked a room at a nearby hotel. The house felt like it was suffocating me. My thoughts were chaos, and Naomi was the eye of that storm. I needed space to think, to breathe. Later that night, my phone lit up with a message from Camilla. "Hey Jonathan, you free tonight?" I tapped out a weary response. "Not sure. Kinda not feeling it." Seconds later, my phone rang. "Jonathan," Camilla said, her tone light but concerned. "You've got to get out for a bit. Come on, let's hang. Get your mind off things." I didn't have the strength to refuse. Maybe being out would dull the roar in my head. We agreed to meet at a bar nearby. She had this bright energy, something that cut through the heaviness I'd been dragging. Even though my heart was raw, being around her brought a moment of relief, like catching my breath after being underwater too long. Eventually, she tilted her head and looked at me closely. "Jonathan, what happened with Naomi? Are you okay?" I hesitated. Then the words just came out. "It's over. She was lying. Still seeing Grant. I'm done with her." Camilla's expression shifted, eyes widening. "Are you serious? Jonathan?" "Yeah," I said quietly, fighting the sting. "I didn't see it coming. Thought we were solid. Guess I was wrong." "I know how hard you fell for her," she said gently. "But you deserve better. You really do." We kept talking into the late hours. At some point, something changed. Something subtle but unmistakable. The air between us grew thick, charged. Her fingers brushed mine and stayed there. In that moment, something passed between us. Soft, real. The pain started to loosen its grip, replaced by a stillness I hadn't felt in ages. "Jonathan," she said softly, barely more than a breath. "I've been meaning to tell you I care about you." I met her eyes, my voice caught somewhere between surprise and silence. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied, leaning in. "Just know I'm here." She kissed me, gently at first, then with a quiet urgency. Everything else faded away until nothing existed but that moment, just the two of us. 3 days later, I returned home. Naomi stood by the doorway, suitcase at her feet, eyes swollen and red. "I can't do this, Jonathan," she said, voice shaking. "Please, let me fix this. I swear I will." I stood there, unmoving. No apology could erase what she'd done. My heart still ached, but my choice was clear. "Naomi," I said, voice even, "we're finished. I'm done pretending. I don't trust you anymore." She stepped closer, desperate. "Please, Jonathan, I made a mistake, but I'll change. Just give me one more chance." I shook my head. It was the hardest thing I'd had to do, but I meant it. "No. Whatever we had, You broke it. I can't put it back together. She looked at me, searching for something in my eyes. When she found nothing, her face fell. She wiped her cheeks and nodded faintly. Okay, she said, barely audible. I understand. She picked up her suitcase, turned, and walked out. The door shut quietly behind her, and in that silence, the finality of it hit me. There was grief, yes, but also something else. Relief. Closure. The months that followed were slow but healing. I poured myself into rebuilding. Camilla moved in not long after. Life wasn't flawless, but it felt right. Calmer. Real. We were shaping something new piece by piece, with each day more solid than the last. Then, one quiet evening, the doorbell rang. It was Naomi. She looked worn, eyes full of regret, voice trembling. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't be here, but I couldn't stay away. Jonathan, please. I'll do anything. Just give me one more chance. For a second, I said nothing. I watched her, remembering everything. A part of me would probably always feel something for her, but the wound she left hadn't healed easily, and I wasn't about to reopen it. No, Naomi, I said, softly but with certainty. That chapter's closed. I've moved on. Her face contorted, stunned by the revelation. You moved on? She repeated, disbelief dripping from every word. With her? Her eyes darted past me, narrowing the instant she caught sight of Camilla standing calmly at the kitchen counter. I gave a slight nod, my voice steady though low. Yes, I've found some peace, Naomi. Whatever was between us, it's over now. The glimmer in her expression hardened into fury. She's your answer? She spat. She didn't wait for my reply. No, you're just running away. From what we had. From me. Camilla stepped forward, her voice steady and composed. I'm not here to take your place, Naomi, she said gently. But Jonathan deserved more than what he got from you. That sentence was a spark in dry tinder. Everything broke open. Their voices collided, sharp and aching, each word soaked in years of hurt. I stood there, unmoving, trapped in the middle of their storm, knowing this was mine to untangle. Enough! I barked, pushing myself between them. This solves nothing. Naomi, it's time to go. It's over. Please, just go. She looked at me, stunned and hollowed, her voice barely audible. You're really doing this? I said nothing. My silence spoke volumes. She turned without another word, her steps slow, shoulders slumped beneath the weight of goodbye. The last fragments of our past followed her out into the night. I stayed behind, the silence she left behind echoing louder than the shouting had. No matter how deeply I tried to bury it, the past stayed rooted in me. The memories, sharp, stubborn, real, refused to fade. Weeks slipped by before I made the decision. I listed the house, ready to shut that chapter for good. Camilla and I packed what was ours and drove away, watching the city and its ghosts recede in the rearview mirror. We didn't have it all figured out, didn't know our final destination, but we had each other. That was enough. We were ready for something new, a quieter place, a clean slate, a new beginning. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. She suggested opening the marriage and set off a chain of events that burned their relationship to the ground. It all began almost routinely. No scandals, no cracks, no betrayal. Just one sentence, spoken quietly one evening. Let's be free. He had no idea what would follow. New lovers, nights away from home, the lingering scent of another man's cologne. She sparkled, he dimmed. But everything changed when someone unexpected entered the picture, someone she herself would never have allowed near his heart. From confusion to conflict, from double standards to a truth too loud to silence. Sometimes, to truly find yourself, you have to lose almost everything. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends or family. It really helps my channel a lot. Please tell me in which city or country you watched this video. I value every one of your comments. So, let's get started. I'm 28 now, and what I'm about to recount is without a doubt the most bizarre chapter in my marriage so far. It all started on what seemed like an unremarkable night, when my 26-year-old wife suddenly suggested we consider opening up our relationship. I was completely caught off guard. There had been no recent fights, no visible cracks in our connection, and I genuinely believed our intimacy was still strong. So her proposal hit me like a freight train. She began laying out her case, how she believed traditional monogamy was a thing of the past, how some of her friends were experimenting with open relationships, and how she felt this was the next step in our growth as a couple. I was raised in a household where faithfulness and commitment were sacred. My father holds very old-school values, and if he heard this, he'd probably either dismiss it with a grunt or dive into a speech about the importance of fidelity. My mom is quieter, but I could already imagine the look of silent disappointment on her face if she knew I was even entertaining the idea of sharing my wife with strangers. At first, I rejected the idea completely, but she kept pushing, saying she felt smothered, that our relationship was stuck in a rut, and that I was clinging to outdated notions. Eventually, just to make the conversation stop, I reluctantly agreed, something I now see as the first real mistake I made. From the moment I gave her the green light, it was like she hit the gas. She created dating profiles, started dressing up more, and was suddenly out late almost every night. She'd come home wearing unfamiliar cologne, and she didn't hesitate to gush about the incredible experiences she was having with other men. It tore me up inside, but I tried to swallow it. After all, I had given her permission, even if everything inside me screamed that it was wrong. She became glued to her phone, giggling at messages, urging me to get out there too, making me feel like some pitiful loser for staying home. Then came a family gathering hosted by her father. I didn't feel like going, but I figured I should make an appearance. That's when I ran into Sierra, my wife's stepsister. She's close in age to us, but we'd only interacted briefly in the past since she lived in another state. My wife and she never got along, and the tension between them was always pretty obvious. We ended up talking, mostly as a way to escape the awkwardness of the larger group. To my surprise, the conversation with Sierra felt easy and natural. At one point, she brought up the rumors she'd heard about us having an open marriage. I confirmed it, and when she noticed my discomfort, she asked me point blank if I was truly okay with it. I told her the truth, that it was slowly destroying me. She looked at me with genuine concern and said it seemed like I was being taken for granted. We eventually moved on to lighter topics, but a few days later, she sent me a message. We started texting more often, initially laughing about awkward family drama. Over time, those chats grew more personal and flirtier. I never imagined anything like that happening with Sierra, but it did. One day she half joked that if my wife was out enjoying herself, maybe I should consider doing the same. I felt torn, annoyed by the idea, but also intrigued. Meanwhile, my wife kept parading her escapades, and I began wondering whether it was time I took her advice seriously. After some late-night talks, Sierra and I agreed to meet for coffee. I felt anxious and a little ashamed, but I couldn't forget that my wife had repeatedly urged me to explore. That coffee date turned into something more meaningful than either of us expected. We talked about everything: her painful breakup, my emotional burnout from the open arrangement, and it felt like we just clicked. The connection was real. That night, we kissed. It was electrifying and terrifying. My first reaction was that this was a massive mistake, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt genuinely appreciated, like someone actually saw me. Of course, the secret didn't stay buried for long. Eventually, word got out that I had been seeing Sierra. My wife exploded. This same woman who had flaunted her own flings now unleashed a storm of insults on me. She was enraged that I had gotten involved with her stepsister. The hypocrisy was staggering. She'd been coming home reeking of other men's cologne, practically celebrating her hookups, and now she acted like I'd betrayed her. She insisted I end things with Sierra immediately. She hurled accusations at her too, calling her disloyal and worse. Things got so heated, I had to pack a bag and crash at a friend's place for a few nights. When I got there, my friend looked me over and asked how things had spiraled so far out of control. I had no good answer. I just kept saying I thought I was doing what she wanted. But clearly, it wasn't. During that time, my wife flooded my phone with furious texts, threatening to kick me out if I didn't stop talking to Sierra. She also began spinning a narrative to our mutual friends, framing me as some predator who had taken advantage of her family. Conveniently, she left out her string of casual flings and how she'd mocked me for not following suit. But I had receipts, screenshots of messages where she detailed her sexual encounters in graphic detail. When I showed a few close friends, the truth became clear. They realized she had twisted the story to play the victim. Predictably, she claimed I was manipulating everyone and misrepresenting her, but the evidence spoke for itself. Meanwhile, Sierra faced backlash too. My wife tried to turn her father against her, but he wasn't easily swayed. He knew his daughter's temperament. While he wasn't thrilled with how things had played out, he didn't buy into the version where I was the villain. He told Sierra he wished she hadn't added more fuel to the fire, but he didn't cut ties with her. At the same time, my mother-in-law was furious with me. She insisted that dragging relatives into the situation was completely inappropriate, placing the blame solely on my shoulders. I tried to explain that it had been my wife's idea to begin with. She had been the one advocating for a marriage without traditional boundaries, but my mother-in-law refused to hear any of it. She demanded that I issue a full apology and essentially beg for forgiveness. I declined. In retaliation, my wife threatened to take me to court, promising divorce and financial destruction. I consulted a lawyer friend for his perspective. After reviewing our texts and communication, he was confident that painting me as the bad guy wouldn't hold up in front of a judge. We had no children, and our written exchanges clearly showed that the open marriage had originated with her. I told my wife that if she truly wanted a divorce, I wouldn't stand in her way. That only enraged her further. She exploded, shouting that ending the marriage had never really been her intention. Maybe she'd just been bluffing, but she soon came back with a new set of conditions, ones that required me to cut ties with Sierra. I refused to accept that. I laid it out plainly. If we were going to have an open relationship, it had to be on equal footing, or not at all. I told her if she couldn't handle my relationship with Sierra, then maybe this wasn't the arrangement she had truly wanted in the first place. She didn't take kindly to that, and became more malicious, spreading lies that I had coerced her into the open marriage idea. That's when everything shifted. I realized I wasn't going to keep retreating. I reminded her that I had solid proof, messages where she practically begged for the lifestyle we'd been living. I told her that if she planned on dragging this into court, I wouldn't hesitate to hand over all of it. At that point, she changed tactics and began playing emotional games. She even contacted my parents in tears, accusing me of being mentally unstable. My mother reached out, asking me directly what was really going on. I told her everything, the unfiltered truth. Both she and my father were stunned. My dad shook his head and simply said this was the consequence of losing sight of what marriage is supposed to mean. Part of me felt embarrassed, but more than anything, I felt relieved that they finally understood. Not long after, my wife made another scene. Late one night, she turned up at my friend's place, pounding on the door, saying she needed to talk. My friend told her to calm down or he'd call the authorities. From behind the screen, she started sobbing, begging for forgiveness, promising to cut off all her affairs if I'd agree to stop seeing Sierra. I asked her what made her casual hookups acceptable, while my involvement with her stepsister was suddenly intolerable. She couldn't give a real explanation, just kept saying it was different. I called her out for being completely hypocritical. She left in a fury, shouting curses as she stormed off. I stood firm. That was the moment I knew I was done. There was no saving this marriage. I filed the divorce paperwork. She pretended to be shocked, insisting she had never truly wanted it and that we should have tried therapy. But I saw it for what it was, another attempt at control. During mediation, she argued for alimony, claiming emotional trauma and financial need. But I came prepared with proof showing she had the ability to work and had spent money on multiple dates. The mediator wasn't moved. With no kids and just a rental lease between us, most of the process came down to dividing joint accounts and personal items. She demanded compensation for supposed emotional harm, but had nothing to support her claims beyond her word. When I provided screenshots of her bragging about dating several people, her argument collapsed. She also tried to shame me in front of the mediator for being with Sierra, calling it repulsive. I reminded her that she'd set no limits on who we could date and that this whole setup had been her idea. She had no comeback, just stared daggers at me. Eventually, we agreed on a simple division. I took what I needed, she kept her own things, and we signed off on the divorce. As she left the mediation office, tears ran down her face, her mother trailing behind, still looking at me like I was some kind of villain. But once the legal process began in earnest, I felt a huge sense of relief. She made one final dramatic gesture by airing our dirty laundry online, trying to paint me as cold and unfaithful. But most of our mutual friends already knew the truth. In fact, many had grown tired of her antics long ago. She had alienated so many people that most simply dismissed her outbursts. Watching her unravel like that was unsettling, but I knew it wasn't my job to intervene. As for Sierra and me, we kept things going. We didn't rush into anything serious, but there were definitely real feelings between us. We were cautious. Her father wasn't thrilled about the situation. My parents were afraid I was inviting more trouble into my life, and of course my ex was completely opposed to it. But none of this was about being provocative. What we had was genuine. She respected me, didn't treat me like I was disposable. We kept the relationship private until the divorce was finalized, just to avoid more chaos. Once the paperwork was done, I moved into a modest apartment. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was calm, and that calm meant everything. There were no more screaming matches at midnight, no more fake smiles over dinner. My ex was mostly out of my life, except for the occasional outburst via text, which I ignored unless there was a legal reason to respond. Sierra started coming by more often, and over time, we built something honest. No secrets, no facades. Of course, some family members judged us, but we chose honesty over pretending. A few people asked how I could date my ex-wife's stepsister. I told them the truth. It wasn't some calculated move, and it wasn't about payback. My ex had wanted the open marriage and ran with it, all while disregarding how I felt. I never went looking for it, but it found me exactly when I needed it. Someone who truly heard me, who actually understood. If my ex hadn't insisted on opening up our relationship, none of what followed would have happened. But she pushed for it, and when things unraveled, she was quick to paint me as the villain. People believe the version of the story that fits their narrative, but I know what really happened. In hindsight, I should have stood firm from the outset and drawn a hard line, or even said no altogether. But I avoided conflict, and that passivity only dug the hole deeper. The cruel irony. She once mocked me for being too traditional, yet the moment I began seeing Isel, she clung to old-fashioned notions of fidelity and betrayal. She never truly wanted an open marriage, just the advantages that came with pretending she did. She chased the excitement without wanting to face the emotional fallout, and as soon as the situation slipped out of her control, she spiraled. I don't regret standing up for myself. What I do regret is how long I let her trample over my boundaries. There's still a sting when I recall how quickly everything disintegrated. Our marriage wasn't lengthy, but I never imagined it would implode so dramatically. Truthfully, maybe we were never compatible to begin with. She craved freedom with zero consequences and expected me to quietly watch from the sidelines. That dynamic was never sustainable. When she realized I wouldn't keep accepting her double standards, the entire structure collapsed. This chapter taught me something crucial. Some people grow, and others simply show you who they've always been. I learned the hard way that you can't fake alignment with something that violates your core beliefs. An open relationship only works when both people are genuinely committed to it. You can't count on loyalty from someone treating their partner as an afterthought. In the end, she paved the road to her own undoing. She wanted to control the script, but couldn't handle it when the story turned against her. And strangely enough, that chaos is what led me to Sierra. That might raise eyebrows, but it's just how things unfolded. I'm not claiming to be flawless. It was a complicated, messy path. But Sierra offered me more honesty and kindness than my ex ever did. We're fully aware of how bumpy the beginning was, and we're both trying hard not to repeat past patterns. We're not rushing into anything serious like marriage. Right now, we're just taking our time, appreciating the peace we've found, without the storm my ex stirred up. And to those who judge me for ending up with her stepsister, I get how it looks. But let's not pretend my ex didn't open that door herself when she urged us to see other people. She had no problem hooking up with strangers. But the moment I found someone, especially someone she detested, she unraveled. I don't feel any guilt about it. If anything, it taught me a vital lesson. Don't create rules unless you can handle them being followed by others. She's off doing her own thing now, likely still spinning the story. I'm not wasting energy chasing rumors. People will believe whatever suits them. The ones who matter already know the truth, and that's enough for me. What matters most is that I walked away from that toxic cycle. I've got my own space now, a more stable life, and a relationship that, while unconventional in its origins, feels far more real. Sometimes I still can't believe it all started with her demanding an open marriage, only to fall apart when I began seeing her stepsister. The drama was intense, but it taught me something. I'm not weak. I can speak up for myself. Sure, I had doubts. I wrestled with guilt. But then I'd remember all those nights she came home, grinning from ear to ear, boasting about her hookups, while I sat there feeling invisible. She laid the groundwork for her own humiliation, and when it backfired, she tried to smear my name. Thankfully, the truth was on my side. I won't pretend every choice I made was perfect, but I'm thankful I took my life back before it went even further downhill. Filing for divorce felt like finally breathing after being suffocated for so long. No more waiting around to be granted permission to be happy. If she still wants to play mind games, she can do it without dragging me into them. Even her father eventually admitted he didn't truly hate me. He was just upset over how everything fell apart. He's not thrilled that I'm dating Sierra, but he respects that we're adults, and no one was coerced. That meant more to me than I expected. I've heard people call this karma coming from my ex. Maybe it is. She built a situation she thought she could control, only to watch it blow up in her face. And the most devastating part for her? I ended up with the one person she never wanted me to be close to. Now she's left to sit in the aftermath, and there's nothing left to spin. As for me, I'm finally free of the chaos, and I can finally breathe. I'm not stressed about her next move or whatever lies she's spreading. If she pushes too far, I have the truth to back me up. So that's the story. My wife asked for an open relationship, and it all went downhill when I took her up on it and fell for her stepsister. It's messy, it's dramatic, but it's real. What I've learned? Never let anyone talk you into something that doesn't sit right in your soul. And if you find yourself in that spot, don't stay quiet. Speak your truth before you lose yourself entirely. I'm moving forward now. I'm with someone who genuinely cares, and I'm done with the manipulation. It's not perfect, but it's honest. And that's 1,000 times better than the wreckage I walked away from. In the end, I guess this is my strange version of a happy ending. I got out with my sanity. She can hold on to the drama. I'll take my peace. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.